If you do not know what is going on right now, then you are living under a huge rock. Today we'll be exploring what the GameStop revolution say about contemporary American attitudes in political culture. Now, I have to say this before I start. This is purely an analysis of recent events and its significance in American political culture. In no way, shape, or form am I giving you financial advice. I would be lying if I said participating in this is not risky. Consult your financial advisor, not this video. Now, before I get to the significance of recent events with in regards to the GameStop revolution, first I need to define a few terms and I need to catch up anybody who is living under that boulder up to speed. So first we need to define the stock market. In order to define the stock market, we need to define what a market is in general. A market is where goods and services can be exchanged. Very simply as that. The price of such good or service is a communication device. It communicates the value of a certain good. Right? For example, if the supply of a good goes up and the demand goes down, the price of that good or service decreases. So the price is a communication device. The stock market is an exchange of shares in a company, stakes in a company, stocks in a company. You've probably heard these terms before. It provides an evaluation of a company's worth via the same mechanisms of supply and demand. And it could also have other factors that is weighted in deciding a company's worth. Now, what could that be? Easiest example could be the attitudes towards a company. If everybody is panicking about a company and they quickly sell, then the value of that company goes down. So it may not be strictly up to supply and demand. Short selling is essentially betting on the demise of a company. Now I use demise cautiously because it doesn't necessarily have to be the demise of a company. It could simply be a prediction that a company will not perform up to speed, and thus the value of that company will decrease. Now, let's give you a situation. Let's say I ask Andrew uh, to lend me a $10 stock in Ethan's business. Shout out to Ethan, by the way. You can check out his newest episode of OK Zoomer. I'll leave the link in the description or, on the top somewhere up there. So I lend a stock of $10. Lend, right? Keyword lend, a stock of $10 from Andrew on Ethan's business. And I predict that Ethan's business the valuation of a stock of a share in Ethan's business will go down to $5 because maybe he's not selling as many products as he should, right? So a month later, Ethan's stock actually goes down to $5, and I say, okay, I buy up that stock again, I give it back to Andrew, and I pocket the difference, right? Let's say I had to pay Andrew $1 commission, and that means I made a profit of $4. Now, what happens if my prediction was wrong and Ethan came out with this new killer episode in this podcast, and everybody is just moi? They're loving the episode, and Ethan's business is growing. Then I have to buy that stock, give it back to Andrew because remember I lent it, I borrowed it, and I lose $5. Make that $6 because I have to pay that $1 commission. So GameStop, you probably know what GameStop is. It's a retail store and it sells video games, consoles, and everything in between. GameStop is also notorious for giving you nothing back when you return whatever video game that you wish to return.
Well,
Oh, I'm sorry. And there's plenty more where that came from.
GameStop recently have been doing awful, right? As they struggle with the ongoing pandemic. Remember that they're a physical retail store and they struggle to compete and reap the benefits of other video games companies who received profits from moving the video game industry or retail, right, online. There was one redditor on Wall Street Bets, you probably guessed it, that who invested 50K into GameStop despite the seemingly growing consensus that GameStop may be meeting his demise, right? And there was an onslaught of good news for GameStop, like online sales, right? The online sales for GameStop increased July 11th of 2020. The Chewy.com founder bought 9% of the company in August 31st. Chewy.com planned to make GameStop a competitor to compete against Amazon, which I guess, sounds like good news. Amazon is a huge company. That happened September 22nd. GameStop also announced a multi-year strategic partnership with Microsoft October 8th. And Chewy.com, again, another piece of news with them, they raised their stake in GameStop to 13%. And not to mention, in 2020, there were new consoles like the PlayStation 5 and the Xbox Series X that were sure to increase the profits of GameStop, especially in the final quarter of 2020. Despite this, GameStop was still not performing well. Many believed that the stock was undervalued, and that's reasonable. After all of that news, GameStop stock wasn't really increasing all that much. What is going on here? Well, the Redditors figured out that GameStop was one of the most shorted companies in the stock market. As a matter of fact, more stocks were shorted than available. And so the Redditors concluded that those on Wall Street were suppressing the stock of GameStop to make a profit from the company. This is not surprising. It's happened before, right? Big players in Wall Street making everybody panic, selling their stock and then picking them up, picking all those stocks on for dirt cheap and making money off of it. This is not new stuff. The new stuff, however, is their response, right? The individual traders on Wall Street Bets banded together to buy immense amounts of GameStop stock to clap back at the hedge fund Mongols, resulting in an inflated value of that stock. Those on Wall Street now have to quickly buy the stock to return it, right? To offset the losses, which ultimately resulted in the prices being inflated even more. The highest stock of GameStop was $469, and at the time of this recording, the stock is at $325. Right? It is safe to say that their early birds among the Redditors are effectively millionaires, and there's news that Redditors are still holding stock even though they've made profit up to and perhaps past $50 million. And that really shows us an underlying message. Right? It's not about the money, it's about the message that these Redditors are effectively sending to Wall Street. And so what are the effects of this spectacle, right? So first, I think it is important to note that they are not breaking any law, right? They did not conspire together to manipulate the market, and they did not lie about a stock's value, right? For example, I cannot call everyone I know or go on MSNBC and CNN or whatever, any news outlet, and say that Ethan's business is going to skyrocket in the next few days when it's actually not, so I can cash out, right? The cash out from the stock increasing in value, from attitudes shifting into a positive light from my remarks on Ethan's business, which is completely baseless in the first place. However, that is not what is going on here, right? It's just random people on the internet randomly deciding, maybe not entirely randomly, right? This was a really good effort, right? But it is random people on the internet deciding to buy a buttload of GameStop, right? And AMC and BlackBerry and other companies. Essentially, this is a game of musical chairs. There will be somebody holding the bag at the end of this. And again, it may seem that is about sending a message rather than people making a profit. But I think it is important to note that. I really do think it's important to note that. Hedge fund titans can simply short sell again, right? Because the value is inflated artificially, and so it's going to come back down sooner or later. And so they can short sell again and they can recover some of their losses, right? That's why I believe it was trending on Twitter. That's why the general sentiment among redditors and those on the internet is to not sell. Do not sell. Hold the line, because the longer they hold the line, the more Main Street can hurt Wall Street. Now, let me tell you, the effects of this were really felt by Wall Street. They're losing up to and perhaps more than $70 billion. Melvin Capital, right, they were heavily involved in shorting GameStop, had to be bailed out with funds up to $2.75 billion. The anger is not in this, but rather the response of the Wall Street establishment, the financial establishment. TD Ameritrade restricted trading stocks, shares of these companies like GameStop and AMC and BlackBerry and Nokia, among others, and online investing apps like Robinhood followed suit really quickly, generating a lot of backlash on both sides of the aisle. All sorts of people, from the working class, from the redditors or random people on the internet, to essentially CEOs and businessmen as well. To put fuel on the fire, Robinhood only allowed people to sell the stock. So that's straight market manipulation, right? Not only that you stop the people from buying more stock because your establishment friends were losing billions of dollars, you left the sell option, right? So the manipulation is clear here. Everybody know it. Anybody with two eyes and a few brain cells to rub together, they know what is going on here. This is apparently because Robinhood, in part at least, is owned or connected somehow to Citadel, who owns Melvin Capital, which was the company that basically faced a ridiculous loss from shorting GameStop. Americans are fed up with the establishment. They are fed up, whether it be political, corporate, or financial. If anything, they're deeply tied, right? We know this. We know there's a revolving door between government, corporate, and financial institutions, right? Somebody can just easily run a corporation and find themselves working in a government position maybe in the next few years. They can fill up positions all the way up to and including the cabinet, right? These are people closest to the president. These are people who run the departments, right? The cabinet. Let's take, for example, Jen Psaki, right? The press secretary of the Biden administration. Her brother, Jeffrey Psaki, is a portfolio manager at the hedge fund Citadel. Janet Yellen received $100,000 from Citadel. These two examples do not even begin. They do not begin to describe the revolving door that is the establishment. And people are fed up with it. And people know what's going on and they're fed up with it. People were also angry. I believe it was Senator Warren who essentially wrote this letter to the SEC, and it pretty much sounds like she's not a fan of the redditors and the internet folk who decided to invest in GameStop. Right? This is just the establishment. Elizabeth Warren may seem like she cares about you on when she is running for president because, right, it's needed. She doesn't care. It doesn't matter. She's part of the establishment. You can read the letter yourself, the letter to the SEC. And the wording is absolutely ridiculous. It's ludicrous. She frames it as if she was looking out for us. But obvious is obvious what she was getting at in the letter. I think a good way to describe what is going on with Americans' relationship with the establishment is one of the lines. It's pretty callous. One of the lines that were said at the Capitol riot, but I think it is crucial that we unpack this line. Hang Mike Pence. Right? That was one of the things said in the Capitol building as rioters got into the Capitol building, right? Hang Mike Pence. Now, I would make the contention that it really means hang the establishment. Because if you remember clearly, when Mike Pence decided not to overturn the election, rightly so, in my personal opinion, he, or rather, former President Trump tweeted as Mike Pence delivered that statement that Mike Pence failed us. He failed us. He couldn't fight for the American people. Now, at that time, when he tweeted that, right, and I'm not quoting him directly, by the way, but that is essentially along the lines of what he said. Now, when he tweeted that, what does that mean? That means Mike Pence then and there became the symbol of the establishment. That's what that means. And so when people walked in, when they said, hang Mike Pence, they really meant hang the establishment. Because they were fed up. They were fed up with the machine. And Mike Pence was only a symbol of them being fed up with the machine, right? Donald Trump, with that tweet, effectively linked Mike Pence with the establishment. He connected the two. And Mike Pence became the symbol of the establishment as Trump supporters walked into the Capitol building, hence the phrase hang Mike Pence. Americans on both sides of the aisle agree on the absurdity of what is going on. Right? Donald Trump Jr. and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez are agreeing on the same thing. Holy smokes. Right? You know something is wrong when they're agreeing. Right? Although I don't know about AOC's response to Ted Cruz. I was a bit partisan of her, but ultimately, people on both sides of the aisle agree. There's a moment of unity right now in America. Everybody thinks that what is going on is, one, hilarious, but two, well deserved. The Wall Street big guys deserve this, right? Finally, the little man is getting back the wolf that was distracted from them during this pandemic. If anything, if we learned anything from here, it's not about left or right. It's not about white or black. It's not about male or female. Those are only distractions that the establishment is putting on for us to not really see what is going on with them. Right? Discord banned Wall Street Bets for hate speech. Where was the hate speech? Where was it? Yeah, we're supposed to believe that it was just a coincidence. Now, all of a sudden, when this is going on, right? Now you want to take action against hate speech. Spare me. People know what's going on, right? The establishment are desperately trying to bring us back to the culture. They're desperately trying to bring back these ideologies. They fund these ideologies, mind you. The teachers' unions fund the ideologies that are being taught at our schools. I wouldn't necessarily say fun, but they're definitely complicit in it. The establishment, the revolving door, they work in our government. Those in the Biden administration don't care, but they still push the critical theory and they still push these ideologies anyway, because it effectively divides us. It makes us victims. It makes us suck up to them. It makes us dependent, these ideologies. The culture war divides us, so we don't see what's really going on. Right? It's like we're two brothers in a room fighting, two siblings in a room fighting out, and the oven, or rather the stove is on fire, but the siblings are fighting in a room, so they don't even know what is going on in the kitchen. But if we stopped fighting for a second, we stopped fighting during this GameStop revolution, we've opened the door and we realize, holy smokes, the rest of the house is filled with smoke. The establishment don't mind if you live in a postmodern reality, right? You don't mind if you lived in an age of narratives, because their narrative will reign supreme. They have nothing to lose. They can only gain from here. As a matter of fact, they have to hide objective reality, because the objective reality is the machine is running. They're the problem. So they have to craft these narratives. They have to craft it. And that idea of prioritizing narratives over an objective truth, over facts, mind-independent facts, fundamentally does not fit with the philosophy of America. They know it. But guess what? That philosophy allows them to get in power, allows them to keep the power. Why do you think a lot of the corporations love China? They love doing business in China. Because the Chinese government essentially follows that type of philosophy. The philosophy that runs the Chinese government and the philosophy that runs America are fundamentally different. Right? China crafts narratives all the time. All the time. An establishment wants to bring that here. Right? I know the Marxists will say, Daniel, capitalism is exploiting the workers. Over here in the United States, workers are not being exploited here. They're being exploited in China. Because there are no individual liberties. Because the individual is not the unit of reality in China. The government is. The state is. And if the state decides that they're just going to throw out an objective reality, an objective truth, because it is expedient for them, they will do it. An establishment wants that here, because it helps them keep power. The real battle is the elites versus the common man. The only real debate is the response to the establishment.